Simon Cowell was truly astounded by Darci Lynne, and the entire globe was cheering her on. An adolescent with an angelic voice. I love her, of course, but she's a pain in the ass. You worry too much, Oscar. Sometimes you just have to enjoy the good moments. The puppetry prowess of any Broadway performer with the comedy of an experienced comedian. She was more than just good. She left a lasting impression. The thing that no one ever tells you, though, is this. You'll wonder how she ever managed to continue singing with the burden she was carrying behind that flawless smile, those standing ovations, and all that confetti. It's a narrative so honest and subtly tragic. Stay with me through to the end. The reality is harsh, and it should be heard. Come on, AGT is won by Darci Lynne, but confronts enormous stardom. Millions of people fell in love with Darci Lynne in the most surprising and captivating way. For most people, May 30th, 2017, was simply another day, but Darci saw it differently. It was a pivotal day in her early life that would alter her perceptions of childhood, celebrity, and aspirations. Yes, school has already begun. I'll have to make up the 3 weeks I missed. The 12-year-old Oklahoma girl, armed only with her anxieties, her hopes, and a pink puppet named Petunia, was set to make an indelible impression as she took the stage at America's Got Talent. Using her puppet, she sang the legendary song Summertime from Porgy and Bess, which is difficult by any measure. With such grace and vocal power that even the judges with the most experience sat there in awe. Was it authentic? Did this little girl truly hit those notes with such soul and clarity that she was hurling her voice? The audience literally let out a gasp. There was a tingling sensation on your skin. Something was changing in the room, and then it happened. Mel B, clearly moved, got to his feet, showered Darci with golden confetti and purposefully hit the golden buzzer. Darci's life went into overdrive after that one moment of impact and booming buzz, which sent her to the live performances. Her audition became the most viewed video in AGT history in a mere 30 hours. Imagine that. A little over a day later, an Oklahoma middle schooler had gained international fame. Really declared America's Got Talent the winner. Right now, I'm in complete astonishment. Darci was thrown into a whirlwind while still feeling the emotional high from the performance. Even though that moment was incredible, it was just the beginning of something more larger and more intricate than anyone could have imagined. She arrived on stage with a puppet, a broad smile, and a voice that nobody had anticipated. Not only was Darci Lynne a gifted ventriloquist, she was the love of America. But after the lights went out, what became to her? Despite the golden confetti and standing ovations, Darci had to overcome obstacles that nobody anticipated. What went wrong? At what point did things become painful? This story will enlighten you if you've ever wondered what fame does to someone so young. The entire narrative is more moving and inspirational than you may imagine, so make sure to read it through to the conclusion. As the contest progressed, Darci kept shining brightly. She demonstrated that her skills were not a coincidence by introducing new puppet characters, such as Oscar the Shy Mouse and Edna Dornacher, a feisty elderly woman who has a thing for Simon Cowell. In addition to being technically stunning, her performances were incredibly engaging and emotionally stirring. Alright, Oscar, who among us received the golden buzzer? Viewers had already fallen in love with her by the time she sang, with a little assistance from my pals for her farewell show. And it became official on September 20th, 2017, when the results were released. The winner of Season 12 of America's Got Talent was Darci Lynne. And not just any victor. For an AGT finale, she had gotten the most votes ever. That's stuff that will make history. The victor. But here's the thing, celebrity is rarely a one-way ticket to happiness, particularly for someone so young and when it comes so swiftly. It was astounding how much attention Darci started to get. She accumulated millions of social media followers in a matter of weeks. Interviews, photo sessions, and guest appearances poured in. She appeared on Ellen DeGeneres' show out of nowhere, singing with celebrities like Pentatonix and Terry Fator. What started off as a small 5-city tour abruptly grew into a 52-location national extravaganza. In under 6 minutes, Her first significant solo performance sold out. 6 minutes, indeed. I simply practiced in front of my mirror after she offered me some advice, and it stayed. Whoa, that's quite amazing. It goes beyond popularity. That's chaos. And yet, despite all of her accomplishments, Darci made every effort to maintain her sense of reality. She still needed to think about school, visit her friends, and somehow preserve her youth. But after being on national television in front of millions of teenagers, how can you return to algebra homework and cafeteria lunches? That was the problem, the part for which no one can prepare you. In an attempt to restore some kind of routine, Darci went back to Deer Creek Middle School. However, she discovered a new form of pressure instead. In an interview, she once said that going back was a little crazy. She described how many of the incoming children in the 8th grade weren't merely inquisitive. They were enamored by the stars. She said, half smiling, "Oh my gosh, Darci Lynne," to which they all responded. Anyone, much less a young girl who was merely attempting to mature, can feel the weight of constant attention. It wasn't just her, either. Nate, her brother, was caught in the crossfire despite never having asked for celebrity. Darci once talked about how he would get home angry because he was always answering inquiries about his sister instead of having a conversation about his own life. Is that even possible? Trying to establish your identity as a teenager when everyone else is only interested in your sibling? It appeared that fame was more than just Darci's burden. It was also affecting her family. Well, that will be a lot of fun. Undoubtedly, it resembles a family day or night show. Darci and her staff reached a compromise to handle everything. In order to avoid missing too much school, she would tour on the weekends and vacations. That seems like a sensible answer on paper. But what happens if your weekends are occupied with meet and greets, shows, sound checks, and travel? After that, your weekdays are occupied with math assignments, locker rumors, and children pleading with you for selfies. It's difficult to strike that balance. It's draining. And gradually, it became harder to distinguish Darci's private life from her public persona. It becomes quite inebriated. Because I'm thinking about 10 distinct things at once, they wanted to check how active my brain is. However, where did the performance start and the girl finish? Could she be a celebrity and still be a child? Even grown-ups have trouble answering those difficult questions. Therefore, even while Darci Lynne's story is one of extraordinary skill and unheard of success, it also highlights the unspoken consequences of celebrity, particularly when it comes too quickly. It's about what happens when the lights go out and you still have schoolwork that needs to be done the following day, after the golden confetti has fallen. It serves as a warning that when people aren't allowed enough room to just be human, even the brightest stars may struggle to shine. Behind the spotlight, Darci struggles with loneliness and anxiety. The journey of Darci Lynne was considerably more complicated than anyone watching from their living room could have fathomed, despite the bright lights, viral applause, and the charming illusion of a dream-come-true story. The majority of people saw a self-assured, vivacious ventriloquist with a beautiful voice and charm that was well beyond her years. However, beneath that radiant smile lay a little girl quietly facing inner demons that were further heightened by her notoriety. You know how people tend to think that having fame as a child is a one-stop shop for privilege and happiness? Darci's story serves as a reminder that not all brilliance is always highlighted by the spotlight. It also reveals the associated expectations, pressure, and dread. There were indications from the start that Darci's path would be more difficult than it appeared, even before she ever took the stage at America's Got Talent. People who knew her as a child would frequently say that she was extremely timid. And that performing in front of people was like climbing a mountain. Upon observing her extreme restraint, her parents realized that if she was ever to accept her gift, something needed to change. Thus, they gently pushed her into the pageantry world. For the possibility that it would encourage her to open up, not for the glamour. In an attempt to boost her confidence and alleviate her phobia of performing, they registered her in the International Cinderella Scholarship Program. Even if it enabled her to take those initial courageous actions, it didn't change the essence of the girl she was, a person who felt intensely and worried frequently. When she won America's Got Talent at the age of 12, everything changed practically immediately. It was, in fact, one of my greatest aspirations. Additionally, since ventriloquism is uncommon, I would really like to preserve it. She was a puppet-wielding girl from a little town 1 minute. She was a national treasure the next day. However, it turns out that being famous doesn't allow you time to get used to it. She was suddenly expected to be prepared to act, to smile, and to bear the burden of expectations that would cause most adults to crumble. She has acknowledged this herself. At the age of 12, I was attempting to make sense of all that was going on. It was too much to bear all at once. That type of whirlwind, can you imagine it? One moment you're working on your homework, and the next you're traveling across the nation, being interviewed by the national media, and reading online comments made by strangers about you. Darci battled something that few people could see, despite the fact that millions of people loved her and her gigs sold out. I doubt it. Not the. What kind of clothing should I wear today? However, the kind that hints that you might not be good enough. She would occasionally question whether it had all been a fluke, even when everyone else was applauding. Could it have been pure luck? What happens if I'm not as good as people believe? She would ponder. Every encore and fan letter didn't make that creeping imposter syndrome go away. It persisted, subtly questioning her value even as her career took off. Behind every standing ovation, there may be a silently trembling heart, the kind of thing that celebrities rarely discuss. One of her greatest struggles was juggling her rising stardom with a typical adolescent life. Darci was on airplanes, stages, and red carpets, while most children her age were preoccupied about things like who to sit with at lunch or what to wear to the school dance. Even if some aspects of it might have seemed exhilarating, she was beginning to yearn for even a small dose of normalcy. She said, "There were days when I just wanted to be a regular kid again. I missed going to school dances, spending time with my friends, and generally leading a normal life." In addition to opening doors, fame had also subtly closed others. Was it worthwhile? She most likely struggled with that question more than once. The pressure to constantly be on came next. Continue to be the happy, kind girl that everyone loved on AGT. At one point, Darci acknowledged that she felt pressured to constantly live up to that image. She claimed that she felt pressured to constantly be the contented, ideal girl that everyone adored on AGT. However, how do you maintain your perfection when you're still growing up and real life is chaotic and full of complex emotions? It's understandable why she began to have mental health issues as a result of such expectations. She grew extremely conscious of her appearance, her words, and the opinions of others. She admitted that she was always concerned about what other people thought of her and that she didn't want to make any mistakes or let her followers down. Imagine attempting to be a teenager while carrying that ongoing emotional burden. Eventually, even going to school, which ought to have been a consistent aspect of her existence, become too challenging to continue in the conventional manner. Missing significant amounts of class time was necessary for touring, performing, and filming. "Last year, I attended public school, and it was really difficult," she said. "It was difficult to miss so much work and to fit everything in when I returned from my tour. The framework of a typical educational timetable did not align with the demands of her career." She therefore took the difficult decision to switch to homeschooling in the 8th grade after giving it careful consideration and likely a lot of back and forth. "I think it's the best way to go," she added, adding that it was a difficult decision to make. Despite being challenging, that decision gave her the emotional and professional freedom she much needed. One thing remained constant in Darci's life despite all of these difficulties: her family. Her parents sacrificed for her since they understood the amount of pressure she was under. They resigned from their jobs to provide her with full-time care, acting as both her emotional support system and schedule managers. "My parents have really grounded me," she said. She might have remained stable because of that kind of unwavering support in a world that can so quickly devour and spit out young stars. The story of Darci Lynne is ultimately about more than simply a young girl who has a golden buzzer moment and a puppet. It explores what happens when pressure and skill combine and how difficult it can be to remain true to yourself when society demands that you be someone it wants you to be. Her story serves as a reminder that there may be someone silently fighting to remain whole behind every shining stage light. Someone who simply wants to feel like a child again, in spite of all the wealth and recognition. Perhaps it would be worthwhile to inquire the next time someone claims that she has it all. How much it costs. This leads us to a devastating truth that fans have begun to recognize and discuss. Concern is raised by Darci's emotional and physical well-being. Stay there because what follows could genuinely alter your perception of her for the rest of your life. Concern is raised by Darci's emotional and physical well-being. Katie, the yodeling cowgirl, and 13-year-old Darci Lynne farmer. Behind the scenes, something far more subdued and troubling was happening as Darci Lynne's star continued to rise. The same teenager who used to light up the stage with an infectious smile and limitless enthusiasm was beginning to show indications of trouble. Changes were seen by many who had watched her since her early days on America's Got Talent. Initially unimpressive, but sufficient to elicit whispers. Was there something more serious going on, or were they just growing pains? Little things were involved at first. In interviews, Darci was a little more reserved, as viewers noted. Her once bright and vivacious personality seemed a little muted, as if someone had switched off a dimmer switch without everyone noticing. After that, there were the worn-out eyes, the strained grin, and the seldom but important missed appearances. Fans of Concern started to piece things together on social media. The comments came pouring in. She appears worn out. Is she all right? Furthermore, Darci doesn't seem like herself these days. Naturally, supposition quickly gained traction due to the nature of the internet. Fans began to form elaborate conclusions based on a single blurry photo or a cancelled show, leading to rumors of illness and fatigue. The situation was even more complicated. Could the attention that had once made her shine now be exhausting her? The adorable girl with the puppet was no longer Darci. With a calendar filled of shows, interviews, and rehearsals, she had achieved national fame. The pressure never let up. Darci had started to exhibit signs that were unavoidable, according to those close to her. Chronic exhaustion began to set in. Before long, it was more than just fatigue, it was a sense of being completely exhausted. According to reports, she told close pals that she sometimes just couldn't get out of bed in the morning. Sleep was unable to alleviate the fatigue that weighted her body down. The frequency of headaches increased. The nights were agitated. Her best instrument, her voice, sounded strained, overdone, and exhausted from continuous performance. But it wasn't simply physical harm. Darci was experiencing a decline in her emotional state. She started experiencing panic episodes more frequently and without any prior notice. Imagine how terrifying it would be to feel your breath catch and your chest tighten just before you take the stage in front of thousands of people. She felt imprisoned, torn between the silent cries of a body and mind pleading for rest and the demands of celebrity. The very present that had enabled her to overcome her shyness. The puppets that used to comfort her so much. Here we are, folks, at the America's Got Talent finals. How do you feel? It felt like a burden she had to bear all the time now. Her family came through for her in the middle of all of this. Her parents, who have always been watchful, realized that something needed to happen. In order to protect her from the cacophony of the internet, they made the decision to pull her back. The demands of a field that can be cruel to anyone, much less a teenage girl. They reduced her social media presence, declined numerous requests for interviews, and intervened to establish a protective perimeter around her. The goal was to preserve her, not to hide her. According to reports, her mother clarified that their sole objective was to prioritize their daughter's well over the rigors of public life. In order to help Darci navigate what was perhaps the most challenging period of her early career, they also brought in experts, including doctors, therapists, counselors, and others. What occurs, therefore, when the cheers stop and the lights go down? For Darci Lynne, the solution was a time of essential introspection, recuperation, and seclusion. Although her admirers might have missed seeing her more frequently, those closest to her understood that it was time to put her happiness and health before any performance. That is what matters most in the end, isn't it? Peace of mind, healing, and being surrounded by love are what really count after the curtain comes down and the clapping stops. And in Darci's case, that courageous decision resulted in a quiet reinvention, a rediscovery of self, and an inspirational metamorphosis that still moves people to this day. It was even more beautiful than any show-stopping deed. Therefore, stay put because this isn't just a new chapter. You might be moved by this type of pivotal moment as well. Darci inspires others and reinvents herself. The narrative of Darci Lynne is more than just a charming tale of a gifted youngster and her puppet. It's far more profound. It's about the silent fortitude required to grow up in the spotlight, the bewilderment of not knowing who you are while everyone else believes you do, and the courageous choice to change who you are even when everyone else expects you to remain the same. Do you recall how, at the age of 12, Darci Lynne's enormous voice and even greater charisma first astounded the world? She quickly rose to fame with her puppet, Petunia, winning hearts on America's Got Talent and serving as a reminder of what unadulterated joy looked like. Petunia, you must be thrilled to be back on stage. Yes. What transpires, then, when the youngster grows older and begins to question whether she is more complex than what was initially perceived? In 2024, Darci, who is now 19 years old, did something that made people take notice and raise their eyebrows. She returned to the stage at AGT. Everyone used to ask me, Darci, what are you going to do with the $1 million if you win it, when I was on AGT? As a young woman with a whole different message to convey, not as the young child with the puppet. Was she anxious? Of course. She actually said, I feel like I have to live up to what I did when I was 12, but I just don't want to be put into a box, before to her appearance on America's Got Talent Fantasy League. Didn't that one statement say it all? Because how many people have experienced the feeling of being imprisoned by the expectations of others? Darci took a major chance by performing I've Got the Music in Me in a daring and surprising way, briefly putting Petunia on hold. Instead, she grabbed a guitar and demonstrated to the world that she was no longer merely a ventriloquist but rather a self-sufficient artist prepared to make a name for herself. But whence was the source of this creative fire? It's interesting to note that it began during the pandemic, a period of silent uncertainty. Darci, like many others, was stranded at home and didn't know what to do. I hadn't been home for a few years, and I wasn't sure what to do with myself, she later revealed. For someone who had spent the majority of her adolescence performing on stage or in front of cameras, can you imagine how confusing that must have been? However, she leaned into the silence rather than allowing it to consume her. That's how she taught herself to write music. There were no major announcements or media attention, just a young lady by herself in her room, figuring out what else she might be. That has a certain beauty, doesn't it? She ventured into new artistic realms as a result of that. Investigation. Darci began collaborating with Shane Henry and Maggie McClure, two artists from Oklahoma. Additionally, they collaborated to make her debut track, Push Our Luck, a hit that was released on February 5, 2024, a reality. The song is lively, appealing, and brimming with the anxious energy and butterflies that accompany first love. According to Darci, it's inspired by the initial emotions experienced throughout a date. It sounds like it was written by someone who isn't trying to pass as someone else but herself, and it's relatable and honest. She continued to be creative after that. Darci also gave acting a try. She also appeared in the Netflix movie A Cowgirl's Song in 2022. After all, it was a natural fit. She is from Oklahoma, and the job allowed her to combine her passion for performance and music in a novel way. She then dabbled in production, creating the music video for Push Our Luck, which went on to win the Los Angeles Film Awards Best Music Video 2024 prize. Yes, Darci represented more than just her music. Behind the scenes, she was forming its whole idea. She isn't slowing down either. She recently released the soulful pop song Wake Me Up, which showcases a different side of her vocals. Richer, deeper, and more sentimental. Yes, I always perform because I want to make people smile and happy. She is also working hard on a brand new touring performance for 2025 that combines all of her skills, including narrative, composition, ventriloquism, and singing. She's no longer just the girl with the puppet, though, on her terms. Her voice allows her to tell her narrative in any way she wants. She is a young woman. Am I even experiencing this? I mean, I recall stating my life as I went to bed that night. It will never be the same, literally. What can we learn from Darci Lynne's journey, then? That even if some people want you to remain precisely the same, it's acceptable to adapt, to grow, and, above all, to take chances. Because sometimes the finest version of yourself is the one you're becoming rather than the one that everyone remembers. And she's doing just that, Darci. Entering a new phase as a person utilizing her voice and platform, not merely as a performer. I believe I was around 5 years old when I first witnessed ventriloquism at my church. For something far greater than viral fame or ventriloquism. Don't blink, then. Keep clicking. Because what she's doing next, particularly for mental health in children, may be the most impactful aspect of her journey to date. Darci supports mental health and children's causes through her platform. Darci Lynne has been subtly demonstrating that her heart is as huge as her ability, even in the face of dazzling stage lights and the thundering cheers of packed arenas. She may be best known to many as the ventriloquism prodigy who dazzled the globe on America's Got Talent, but she has a whole other side that deserves far more recognition. It's the aspect of her that chooses to utilize her platform to heal, uplift, and make a difference where it counts most, rather than merely to amuse. Even at such a young age, Darci has already started to make her mark in places where creativity and compassion coexist. She visited the Seacrest studios at the Children's Hospital of Orange County on one day in particular, which stands out in her travels. Not with spotlights or fancy effects, but with something much more potent, kindness and connection, she illuminated the room with her cherished puppets, Petunia and Oscar. Darci's performance was more than simply a light entertainment for the kids present, many of whom had been suffering from ailments that were well beyond their years. It was a happy moment, a brief return to normalcy. And a reminder that there was someone out there who truly cared. What must that have meant to those children, do you think? Even for a short while. And it doesn't end there. After leaving that hospital, Darci didn't simply go on to the next show. Rather, she continued to appear for various causes in various ways. She supported and advocated for Horses for Mental Health, a group that helps individuals with mental health issues by using horse therapy. She joined a campaign that may not have made headlines, but it undoubtedly won hearts, standing with actors Dennis Quaid and others. She expressed her appreciation for being a part of something so significant while participating, stating that she was happy to draw attention to the amazing ways that horses can improve our mental health. It was a reflection of the person who heard it, not just a sound clip. What motivates someone so young to be so conscious and purposeful in encouraging others, one could ask. Could it be that she gained a better grasp of what emotional challenges actually look like as a result of her own experience with unexpected popularity, ongoing scrutiny, and the pressure of growing up in the spotlight? After all, nobody is immune to fear or self-doubt because they are renowned. In fact, it may intensify those emotions. Perhaps this is the reason why Darci's advocacy for mental health issues feels so intimate. She is more than just a famous person promoting a cause. She understands what it's like to require a little more help. Influence isn't always about following or viral videos, as demonstrated by Darci's actions. Sometimes it's just a matter of discreetly visiting areas where people are in pain and doing whatever it takes to let them know they are important. She possesses a unique kind of empathy that speaks volumes, whether she is on stage making people laugh with a puppet or offstage supporting people dealing with mental health issues. The world needs more influence like that, don't you think? Someone who uses their spotlight to help others see the light instead of making them shine brighter. We have now reached the conclusion of this video. Thank you for viewing. Please like, comment, and subscribe for future videos if you liked this one. Click the next video that appears on your screen to see more exciting stories.